Hello there. Let me start today's podcast by asking you a very simple question. Peter Rubens, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Hercule Poirot, what do all of these people have in common? Well, they're all outstanding gentlemen. They are experts in their field and are very special human beings. But more importantly, they're all originally from Belgium. Rather like my next guest today, Mr. Antoine Marcq, who is a repeat, you may remember, guest on Campcast. So obviously great pleasure to welcome back Antoine for the second time. We talk about all manner of topic today, everything from comedy, that's to say the differences between British and American comedy in particular, about matters linguistic, and also we get into the weeds a little bit, talking about the great and unending debate over native speakerism. So hope you enjoy that, and without further ado, here's the show. No, what have you done? You've muted yourself. Antoine, come back.
I'm back.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, is it better?
That is, yeah, that's much better.
Okay.
I don't know how you do it. All right.
Enough
of this audio fiddling around. Let's get started. 3, 2, 1. And I am joined today on the show by fellow pedagogue and collared shirt enthusiast Antoine. Hello.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I've also gone for the slightly aggressive 2 buttons undone. I can see, which you've gone as well. Very, very continental of you. Now we're post-Brexit. I think I should have it buttoned up like this, so I look like a true English gentleman.
It is way too hot. Way too hot to button that shirt.
What have you got? Because I did a podcast the other day with Julia, and it was like 30-something degrees. We've got 28 degrees at the moment in England. It's pretty.
I don't know what it is exactly, but yeah, it's around 30. Says 29.
But yeah, okay. So we are on the same wavelength, temperature-wise.
Exactly.
Lovely. Well, we've got some pretty hefty thunderstorms coming tomorrow, so that'll be fun. I love a good thunderstorm, a good electrical storm. When you're just inside reading a book or watching TV or whatever you do.
Yeah, that's key. When you're inside.
yeah, not so much outside. Have you ever got caught short and been in the middle of a big field when it's a thunderstorm?
Actually, quite. We complain about our thunderstorms, but I did a short spell in Cambodia, and I got caught. I was on a bike, and I was getting caught. It was September, so it's the rainy season, the start of the rainy season, apparently. Not an expert on that area of the world, but when I was there, that's what I was told. And at one point, just a thunderstorm was coming. But do you remember, did you watch that unfortunate movie, Independence Day?
Unfortunate? What, was in Will Smith and who else was in it? I can't remember now. Yes, yeah, I've watched it. It's a good film. How dare you besmirch the reputation of that movie?
Do you remember when the airships are coming down on Earth and you just see this cloud of smoke, just a wall of cloud.
Infestation, yeah.
Well, that's what it looked like. I was on my bike like an idiot, and it just looked like just a huge wall of cloud just advancing menacingly towards me. That was the worst I got caught under.
Scary. Yeah, I've been in some fairly open places when there's a thunderstorm coming. Do you know the best place, the safest place you can be if you're caught out in the outdoors? A lot of people instinctively go under a tree. That's a really bad thing to do, because if it hits the tree, then all of the sap inside the tree turns into lava and shoots out, and the tree can catch on fire, all sorts of shit. The safest place you can be in your car.
In your car?
Yeah, because a lot of people you can zap a car with thousands of volts of electricity and you'll be perfectly safe inside, because the car is made of metal, don't forget, And yes, that attracts electricity, but it also acts as a Faraday cage,
Hmm.
and it distributes the charge evenly, leaving you perfectly safe inside. I wouldn't try it, but if you are forced to do so. So that's the main thing I want people to take away from this ESL podcast is lightning safety. Is it true that what's the French word for a bolt of lightning? I heard that it was éclair, as in the.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah. Okay, because I thought maybe someone was making that up, but it's like a as in the dessert.
Yeah.
Like it's like a bun
I
with
don't know if it's connected, but it should be. I can't. It's exactly the same word.
But an éclair as well. I think it doesn't it mean like a sudden idea, a realization? Because you can say that in English. I was hit by a thunderbolt.
Yeah. Yeah. Éclair.
Yeah. Boom. There we go. There we go. Anyway, when we were going back and forth about, talking about what you wanted to discuss on the show today, you said, rather uncharacteristically for you, you said, I don't want to do pedagogical stuff. I've done so much of that. Let's do something cultural. And we got onto the topic of humor and comedy. So run me through your logic there. Why did you think that comedy would be a good topic for us to discuss?
Well, first of all, everybody loves a good laugh, right? I'm pretty sure we haven't done that many podcasts together, but enough to know that we both enjoy a good laugh.
We do.
It's a good thing to have in lessons, and I'm not English, but I am a big fan of British comedy. You are English, so I thought it would be quite fun to talk. We've never talked really comedy in all those brilliant TV shows. You've got a huge history of brilliant comedy in your culture. We could talk about music as well. That would be for our next podcast. All the
sure.
great bands.
Already planning ahead.
Your island.
I like it.
But yeah, for I don't know, that's something that often comes up. I really enjoy a good laugh, so I'll often watch a TV show. And for students, I find it's a great way to give them a bit of extra practice. If you can get students hooked on a TV show, it's going to be regular practice. It's not like a movie that they'll watch once, which will give them some good vocabulary, something like that. But a TV show is something that they'll get into. If they get hooked into a TV show, something they're going to watch on a regular basis for a while. And it's great extra practice outside of the classroom.
So
You
got to be careful though, because some of the best TV shows are like like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, Breaking Bad. So you don't send your teenage kids to go and watch that, and then your parents why is my son learning about methamphetamine vocabulary? So yeah, and I agree with everything you're saying, but the small sort of little red flag that I would wave would be this. Don't you think that there can sometimes be a danger and I fully hold my hands up in this regard and point to myself. Don't you think there's sometimes a danger? Some teachers often play the role of entertainer, of comedian, of sparking students' interest and making everyone laugh and all of that stuff, which is fine, but then at the same time don't really deliver anything of value, of pedagogical or of intellectual value. And I've definitely done that. I'm conscious of it, and I try to find the right balance. But if I'm brutally honest with myself, I think that I tip further on the scale of heavier on the side of entertainer sometimes, and I try not to do it. But sometimes it's unavoidable because I just love having, like you say, I love a laugh as well. I love having a laugh with my students. In my defense, I have a speaking club, not a
that's different. Yeah,
it's different. It is different, and you could argue that that's a perfectly legitimate way of getting. And I do try and obviously teach something every now and again. But do you see what I mean though? Do you think that some teachers can over rely on comedy?
Totally. Well, there's a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk in recent years as well in at international conferences about the fact that yes, a lot of teachers have felt how unfair it is in our industry, that usually a native speaker will have an easier job, will get students. It'll be easier for him or her to get students, and it is easier for him or her to rely on that entertainment factor, on that cultural factor, because, hey, I got loads of stories to tell, and I come from different cultures, so they're interesting, and it makes it easier. But I honestly think that's something that touches all professions. It's really the good old, you know, battle between content and performance, and I think both are equally important. I agree with you. If you as a teacher start seeing yourself as an entertainer, then it's a good sign. You might want to do a bit of CPD at the moment. Maybe you're stuck in a rut. You're doing the same thing, the same books. You need something to stimulate you intellectually and to kind of find a new strategy, a new approach. Maybe that's why you're sticking more and more to the entertainment factor. At the same time, if you're too heavy on content, and you know, we've all had teachers like that weren't engaging because they didn't pay attention to the performance aspect of the profession as well.
It's about finding the right balance. And if anyone needs help finding the right balance, then there's some excellent CPD available on the resource education page, which I will link to in the description. I agree. So it's an international conference, people would say that, wouldn't they? So some of this native speakerism stuff goes a little bit too far. It's a little bit silly. Like, native speakers have an easier job delivering content in their own language. Really? You think so? Like, of course they do. What is this? It's the sort of the plague of wokeness is even encroaching on our noble shores in the ESL world. Don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these people who you know, denigrates the native speakerism argument in its entirety.
No, I think again, you just the right words. You said it's about striking a balance. I honestly believe, like, that's the way I lead my life. I do not see things as black or white anymore. There are very few things in life that we can deal in just in extremes like that, black or white. I see the point of the talk about native speakerism, but I think a lot of the experts that talk about it are fooling themselves a little bit, because the problem with native speakerism, to me, mostly doesn't come from teachers ourselves. It comes from the fact that the students, the clients, often think that, and it does make sense in a certain logic, that a native speaker will be better for them to study the language. But it's important for us as an industry to carry out the message to those students that what you need first and foremost is a teacher.
Absolutely.
A professional teacher that is not a native speaker will do a better job than a native speaker who is not 100%. A teacher.
100%.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, I agree completely. And that's really where I think that's where the conversation should end. That's all I'm saying. And
exactly.
The problem with so if you look at certain industries, like for example ESL World in China, it's often claimed that China has a really bad native speakerism problem. I think it's a bit more surface level and a bit more grotesque than that. China has a racism problem. A lot of the time, they're not recruiting native speakers. They're not recruiting people who are native English speakers, native Brits, native Americans. They want white people.
Oh,
that's what they're after, and that's a big. Well, I think it's a problem. Maybe the Chinese disagree, but there's this kind of like exoticness, this kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Authority that, or you know, elevated status that a white person has in China. And it's a real shame. Like, you know, if you go to like Thailand or China, you can see it on billboards, like the special like cream to make your skin whiter. People have, in Korea, people get plastic surgery to make themselves look more Western. It's crazy, really crazy. And it's such a shame. And And so in China, for example, there's a lot of Russian people who go to China to fine pedagogues and fine teachers and very experienced professionals, no doubt. But a lot of the time, the Chinese like lap up those teachers because they're white. And I know what I'm saying has some merit, because you try and get a job in a Chinese school as a black guy. So let's say that you're a black native speaker from London who speaks the Queen's English or whatever. See how successful you are in comparison to, I don't know, a German white guy getting a job in the same school. See what happens. Yeah, there's a big problem with that stuff in China. Big problem. Well,
that is definitely a problem. That's a big problem. That is not something I think native speakerism though is well, when I hear talks about it at conferences, I don't have the impression that this talk about native speakerism is aimed at solving that issue that you just mentioned. What bothers me about the talk about native speakerism is when they start basically being ashamed of being native speakers. I heard more than one expert talking about native speakerism saying that, oh, I understood that my students had something interesting to say, and I stopped correcting their mistakes to focus on what they had to say. When I hear that, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a horrible human being. How long did it take you to understand that your students had something interesting to say? What does that even mean? And you stop correcting their mistakes to focus on what they have to say. I'm sorry, but if you can't both focus while your students are speaking, if you can't focus on what they're saying and at the same time the language that they're using, maybe you're not a good teacher, you know? Because
well, I think it's
the basis of a language teacher needs to be able to do both. To focus, there's helping the student express themselves with better language, and there's consolidating the confidence of the student that, hey, what you're saying is worthy of attention. I wouldn't want my Russian teacher corrects my mistakes, of course. I wouldn't want a Russian teacher who is there just listening to what I have to say and going, Antoine, I validate your opinions. Antoine, what you say is worthy, is worth listening to.
It's even worse than that. It's what you're saying is worth listening to, and it's as grammatically or as linguistically valid as what I say as a native speaker. Imagine if your Russian teacher did that. And I brought this up on a podcast with Hugh Deller. And you know, I love Hugh. He's great. But I think sometimes he is a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? He's on this side of the argument that a lot of the time people say, like, it's the equivalent of you know, critical theory applied to, it's critical language theory. It's this slightly postmodern, that is, attitude to language, that there's no right answer. And that's actually true. There is no one right way of speaking English. There's different dialects and different accents. And if you go to South Africa or India or Pakistan or Northern Ireland or Belize, everyone will have different ways of speaking. Yeah, that's true. There are lots of different right ways. And if you say there is no one right way, that's not the same as saying there are no wrong ways, because there are wrong ways. That's the thing. And
I means I, you means you. If I start speaking English by changing that, I'm just completely breaking the code. How can we have communication if I swap I? To me now, I means you and you means I. You're never going to understand what I'm talking about. It's just, there are different right ways of speaking, yes, but that doesn't mean that we need to pretend that there are no mistakes.
And here's the controversial bit. Some of those right ways are better than others, or at least are more desirable in certain situations than others. Now that should be an uncontroversial thing to say, but it's not. And teachers like these who subscribe to these kind of POMO ideas sometimes they can tie themselves up in ideological knots. They're paralyzed and they don't know. So I for example, I brought this up to Hugh, and I'm not referring to Hugh here. I'm just saying I talked about this topic with Hugh, and so he mentioned that Russian teachers, as in people who are Russian who are teachers of English, are sticklers for pronunciation. No, that's true. And very often and so Hugh's, I'm paraphrasing him here, but he said like some teachers they'll torture themselves and try and make themselves sound as close to a native speaker as possible, and they've got this weird preconception that if you have a strong Russian accent, you're not as competent of a speaker. And I'm like, well, I would agree with them. I think if I'm speaking Russian, right, or if you're speaking Russian, or if I'm speaking French or whatever. And this is the example I gave to him. I said, if a native Russian speaker says to me, you sound like a Russian, or if someone mistakes me for a Russian, if someone thinks that I'm Russian by mistake, that is the highest compliment you could possibly give me. And I said, would you agree with that? And he had no answer. He didn't know what to say.
I think it's because they're obsessed with English. They're focusing too much on English as the kind of the imperial the imperial language that is taking over the world, which is a different debate. I can see where we can talk about that on a political level, cultural level, but I'm an English teacher. I'm a language teacher trying to help my students communicate as effectively and as efficiently as they can. And I agree with you on that point. I would differentiate, I think what he was talking about, I would differentiate accents and pronunciation.
Sure.
My goal with my students is not to make them like cancel their identity by not sounding Russian at all anymore. But if their Russian accent is so strong that you misunderstand what they're saying, then we need to correct that, of course. The goal of communication is so that people understand you. It's not that you can express yourself any way you like. Communication is about the other. So think about the other person.
Sure. And to quote Ira Lutsenko when I was talking about this with her, you have the right to want whatever you want. If you want to speak with a Russian accent, go ahead. I'm just saying I've never met a person who wants that. For most people, and I think this should be uncontroversial. You should just be able to say this and not have to explain yourself. To speak with the same type of pronunciation that a native speaker has should be synonymous with competency. For me and this is what drives me crazy. This only happens in the English language. Have you realized this? It only happens in the ESL world. There's no equivalent movement in the French as a second language world, or as far as I know, or the Chinese language world, or the Russian language. Certainly not in the Russian language learning world. You try and speak Russian with an English accent, and they'll laugh you out of the room, and rightly so. Rightly so. I don't see why. And again, I think it's tied up with this notion, this kind of postmodern notion that there's no such thing as correctness. There's no right answers. There's it's all power. It's all class. It's all oppression. Don't think so. Don't think so. There is such a thing as competency. There is such a thing as some forms of language being more desirable than others. And because I said, like, to Hugh, do you teach pronunciation? And he said, sure. Okay. What do you mean by teach pronunciation? If everything is correct, and again, Hugh didn't say this is not his argument. I'm just referring to the conversation that I had with him. I want to be clear. I'm not sort of accusing Hugh of being this, straw man that I'm making here. But, I said, well, if some forms of pronunciation are the same, if all forms of pronunciation are identically valid, why teach pronunciation? If you don't have hierarchy, if you don't have a system of value, you can't teach. You're paralyzed, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. But there we go. So we started talking about comedy, got onto this quite philosophical.
We didn't really even start talking about comedy, honestly.
Okay, let's start right now. Ready? Okay. The French, for all of their sins,
Sorry, again?
The French, people from France. Ooh. So straight away, you know what I'm going to say here, don't you? In Britain, when we joke, very often we joke about Irishmen. We say an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Welshman go into a bar, or a Scotsman, or whatever. And then the butt of the joke is always the Irishman. He's the stupid person in the joke. The Russians, they've got the Chukchas. Okay, they make some joke about stupid Chukchas. The French, as far as I know, I might be wrong about this, they joke about les Belges, about the Belgian
Of course. They've got us, the Belgians, in the north. A little farmland as they see it. Now it has changed. You have different currents. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, they would openly, there were so many jokes. The Belgians are the stupid ones, you know. The Swiss are the slow ones. There's a great expression from Switzerland. Come on, the lake's not on fire. Which is kind of a universal expression for them to say that no need to hurry up, everything's fine. So the Swiss are the slow ones, the Belgians are the stupid ones. Although, you know, we were talking about that, the 21st century woke kind of things, you know, the culture of never saying bad things about other people has caught on to even this. So officially, the Belgians are not stupid anymore in France, they're nice. But you know, it's with that intonation. Oh, I love the Belgians. They're so nice.
And is there any
so mean?
is there any sort of differentiation between French-speaking Belgium and the Flemish part of Belgium, or the Dutch-speaking part, or?
No. You know, to the French, I mean, France is the center of the world, and Paris is the center of France. What am I saying? The world, the universe, you know. So the French don't really see Belgium as for what it is, a country with different languages. They just see it as a mini France. So the jokes about the Belgians are mainly for the French-speaking Belgians, the Wallons, and in all fairness, I mean, we do deserve the jokes.
Why is that? Good. What's an example? Have you got one off the top of your head?
A French joke about the Belgians?
Yeah.
You know what? There's a French truck roaming through. No, wait. Belgian truck driver arrives at a bridge. There's a truck stopped right in front of the bridge. The Belgian truck driver goes out, goes to talk with the other truck driver. The truck driver's looking at the, you know, height limits, going 2 meters. Damn, my truck's 2 meters and a half. The Belgian truck driver looks around and goes, dude, don't worry, there are no cops. Just go for
it. Very good. I always remember one that my French language assistant told me at school. Said, and this is great because it works in French, obviously, in English, and in Russian. You'll see why. Even if you know the joke, play along. Why do the Belgians go to the toilet with bread? To feed the toilet duck. I love that because you've got toilet duck, which makes sense in English. Canard roté, I think, in French. Yeah. And then toilet utka, I think. Utочка. No, utka. I don't. Whatever it is. Wait, I can't remember. Is it duckling in Russian? It's been so long since I cleaned a Russian toilet. But yeah, I love that one. I love that one.
It's not mean. It's.
Well, I think a lot of the time, being able to laugh at yourself is a hugely important aspect of comedy. Let me give you. Okay, I'll give you an Englishman, Irishman, Scotsman joke. So it's the Second World War, right? And there's a German prisoner of war camp, and 3 British soldiers escape from the camp. When I say British, I mean including Ireland, although I shouldn't say that. British and Irish soldiers escape from the camp. So they're running away. The Germans, meanwhile, they realize the prisoners have escaped. They raise the alarm, Achtung, Achtung, and ring the bell, etc. These guys are running across a field in occupied France, and they find an old abandoned farmhouse. In the farmhouse, or next to the farmhouse, there's an old abandoned barn. So they go into the barn. Inside the barn, there are 3 empty sacks. Okay? They each climb into the sack and hide from the approaching German troops. The Germans reach the barn, they bust in, and there's the 3 sacks on the ground. So that they, with their bayonets attached to their rifle, they poke the first sack to see if there's anyone in there. Now, in the first sack, the Englishman's hiding, and he goes, woof, woof. And they go, das ist ein Dog. And they move on to the second sack. In the second sack, here, the Scotsman's hiding, so they poke the second sack with their bayonet in the same way, and the Scotsman goes, meow, and they go, das ist ein Cat. Move on, move on. In the third sack, the Irishman's hiding, they poke it with the bayonets, and the Irishman goes, potatoes, potatoes.
Nice.
I love that joke, because it's, and that's a lovely joke to tell in class if anyone asks you about English jokes, because it's an easy to understand joke. Even if you miss a couple of words here and there, you need to make sure that they know the word sack and that they understand that it's 3 escaped prisoners. But apart from that, it's really easy joke to understand. On that topic, I'm sure at some point, some Russian person must have shown you on their smartphone it's a joke from a British comedy show that Russians adore. They are obsessed with this joke. They love it, love it, love it, love it. And it's not a show that I'd seen before. It's the scene in some Scottish show where there's 2 Scottish guys getting into a voice-activated lift. Have you seen this before?
Yes. 11.
So, again, I'd never seen this on British TV. Only Russian people have shown this to me. And they get into the lift, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, who's listening, it's the gag is that it's 2 Scottish people in an office building in England, and the lift is voice activated. So you have to say like floor 11 or whatever. And so 11 for a Scottish person, it sounds very different to how an English person would say it. And they say 11, and they keep trying to activate the lift, and eventually they get really angry and they start shouting freedom and all of that. Now that's a joke which you could watch that having zero English almost.
Yeah.
You have to know numbers, and you have to understand that the dynamic between Scottish and English, which anyone who's watched Braveheart does, and that's part of the gag. The guys shouting freedom. Anyone pretty much with no English would understand that joke, and that's an interesting phenomenon. Have you found that when you get a joke, when you understand a joke in a foreign language, you laugh doubly because you are just so happy that you've got the joke, especially if it's a language that you haven't been learning very long? Do you find that?
Maybe. I've never thought about it that way. I mean, for me, Russian, like I watch, the Soviet classics. Let's be honest, modern cinema. There are a few modern Russian movies that I have enjoyed. Styliagi. Do you know that one? It's a musical about in the 50s. Really nice. But yeah, just a few. I would say like the comic classics, the Soviet classic comedies, like Brilliantova Ruka and things like that. And to me, I love them because I don't know. Have you watched Louis de Funès comedies? That type of French cinema from the 60s, 70s.
Oh, I know the reference you're making.
They're very similar to
similar
those
sort of
Soviet
feel
movies.
to it. Yeah, I never watched them, but I could sort of picture the posters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, those comedies, understanding those jokes in Russian, actually, because I have so little practice with French. Honestly, I live in English. People often ask me, "Your name is Antoine. You're Belgian. You must speak French mainly." No, that's not true. I only speak French with my family, my nuclear family. I mean, like the parents, brothers, and yeah, those Soviet comedies are kind of. When I understand the jokes, I always think of them. It reminds me of a Louis de Funès joke, a Bourvil joke, something like that. Something from one of those movies. It's cute.
Mm-hmm. There are definitely some great films made these days. amongst a sea of terrible ones. Don't get me wrong. Have you seen those? I have, for the life of me, have no idea what it's called. But have you seen those ones? It's like the Russian version of Marvel superhero movies.
I'm not going to watch that. No, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't watch the Marvel ones, let alone the Russian version of the Marvel ones. But there was this one where like the bad guy was like a robot with, it was like a spinning Matryoshka with guns on and stuff. I was like, my God, what am I watching? But there's some
that bad. Sometimes it can be, it can be actually fun to watch when it gets that. What did I say at one point on? It was just on TV at one point. Like Piranaconda or something like that. Those 90s American terrible movies where they just
sort of like, was it like what's the one with the giant squid versus the shark? Those are the kinds of films that I only watch after 20 minutes past 4. Anything else, I tend not to. But a genuinely great Russian, probably my favorite modern Russian film is What Men Talk About. Have you seen that one?
Yes, of course.
That's a good film. Really good. I loved it.
Series now, right? There are like 3, 4, maybe 5 of them.
Yeah, I haven't watched the first. Was it 2 I've watched? Because there's one where they go to. I can't even remember where they go to now. There's some journey where they have to get to some. Is it Anapa? I think maybe to get to a concert.
Probably. Something like that. Yeah, the first 2, I think, maybe even the first 3 are very good. Yeah.
Do you catch a lot of stand-up, Russian stand-up?
No, actually, I don't. That's not a. I know it's a new thing. Like there's a bit of stand-up here in St. Petersburg, anyways. I don't know about the rest of Russia, but there's definitely a bit of stand-up here. There's good stand-up scene from what I've been told. But
the stand-up scene is exploding in Russia, and it's been really big for a number of years. Oh yeah, for sure. And like you can just watch it on, like, if you've got like TNT on your TV, you can catch like stand-up. There's this thing called I think it's just called Chat with Ruslan Biely and Gorginov or whatever his name is. I can't remember but basically the guys who do Kuji podcast and a couple of it, like the standard like stand-up people. There's Zhensky stand-up, which is really good, really some like top female comedians. I don't know why they needed their own show. I think we can just show them all together, but whatever. Yeah, it's really great. And whenever I'm watching like modern Russian stand-up, I can't help thinking, like, as opposed to like KVN or more like traditional, how it was like Soviet style comedy, because the traditional KVN style, where there was a lot of like mimes and a lot of sort of setups and skits, a skit as opposed to like just a stand-up routine. And I watch it and I think to myself, this just looks like an English stand-up thing. But then I'm full of shit, because all of our English stand-up is a plagiarism of American stand-up. And that because America's really where stand-up as a genre was born. Because before everyone would go up on stage and would just do like one-liners, right? There was no such thing as observational comedy, where they get up and they would tell like, oh, my wife is so stupid that blah, blah, blah. Those jokes, like kind of like, old sexist jokes, which are fine. But it wasn't until
that's how it started, yeah.
Sure, but then it wasn't until Lenny Bruce got on stage in the 1960s and went on stage and said, my wife divorced me today, and then went into his whole stand-up routine. If you watch Lenny Bruce now, it's kind of dated, and it's like it's like any old comedy. You watch it and it's hard to watch sometimes. It puts up a lot of resistance, but it was a whole new direction that stand-up comedy went in, when people would go on stage and would start delivering a monologue. And what I like about stand-up comedy is that you're watching a performance of someone thinking on your behalf.
Yes.
They are sort of fleshing out these thoughts. And a lot of the time, if the comedian, this is why dark comedy is so important, if the comedian can precisely hit a thought which you didn't even know you were going to have, and if they hit it just right, and you would have been embarrassed to admit that you'd thought that before, George Carlin was very good at that.
Yes.
He had this whole routine about watching the news, and he said, I watch the news for one reason and one reason only: entertainment. If everything's fine in the world, boring. I want to see nuclear explosions. I want to see a meltdown. I want to see civil war. I want to see flooding, a volcano. I want panic. I want people under pressure. That's entertainment. And most people would never admit to having those emotions. When you see like 9/11 or a war or something terrible on the news, you get a small feeling of excitement. You're like, oh, this is news. This is exciting. And it's a very private emotion, which I barely even perceived in myself. But George Carlin was up there on the stage, shouting it loud. Really, really inspirational. Do you like Carlin?
I love, yeah. Carlin's really, really good. I was going to, while you were talking, my first thought was, yeah, George Carlin. Observational. There's a lot, and you're right that it's different. The British stand-up, American stand-up is very different. Americans are, well, it's going to sound like criticism. I was going to say Americans are less subtle, but I do find that's generally true. But it's also quality. It also means they're more directly honest, I would say. So American stand-up, you have a lot of people like George Carlin that they're just up there and just address you directly as an equal, as a person. Whereas probably British stuff is more theatrical, it's more European, there's more history probably. The actors are more trained, I think. When I think of, when you think of, most people think of Britain, they'll think, Mr. Bean, and then Rowan Atkinson. And you think it's that simple, and it might be a little stupid in a way, but the guy's huge. An interview, the guy's super smart and very professionally trained, and you'll never have Rowan Atkinson just doing a stand-up American style like George Carlin, who just comes up on stage and it doesn't even look like he prepared anything. Of course he did. We know he did.
George Carlin.
Yeah.
George Carlin was very unique among stand-ups. He didn't just write bullet points. He wrote every word for word. He knew exactly what he was going to say.
But it was crazy. So, like when he's in performance, you have the impression that it's really just a guy who's up on stage, just spilling his guts out. Whereas with Rowan Atkinson, I'm thinking of his sketches, everything is staged. You're at the theater. With American stand-up, it doesn't feel like the theater as well. Like more recent ones, like Louis C.K., for example. Same thing, Louis C.K., when he's at a stand-up, you just feel like it's just Louis C.K. is there and he's just talking to you as a friend. I'm a big fan of Seinfeld, the TV show, and the guy. He's got
that's a great example of the difference between a British and American comedy, like Seinfeld, Friends, that kind of thing. Is so for me, the comparison between British and American comedy is best defined by The Office. So,
yes,
as you know, the original version of The Office, made by Ricky Gervais, is a British show, and it got made. There was a French version, I think, as well, Le Job, if I'm not mistaken. And then was the American version, of course, with Steve Carell. And for me, the American one is just unwatchable. It's just I can't stand it. It's so American, and a lot of people will know what I'm saying when I say it's too American. Well, not that it's too American. It's just it just misses the mark for me. It's a bit silly. It's a bit incredulous. It doesn't suspend my disbelief. But something like The Office is one of the most exemplary specimens of British comedy. That is one of the. It's so dry and sarcastic and desperate and grey and dreary. Don't you think?
And they completely missed that in the American version. I will admit, like I will love American original comedy when they do their own stuff, but usually when they buy something foreign to reshoot it in American way, it's terrible. It's horrible. I don't know if you know that Swedish Danish crime show, The Bridge. Oh my God.
Yeah, we love them in the UK. We import them.
Yeah, just switch on the American The Bridge.
Oh, really?
Oh,
the Brooklyn Bridge.
It is a despicable TV show. It is everything that is wrong about America right up there. I will admit that I really do like the American Office. I find they completely changed it. I agree.
But that's a true adaptation, right? That they changed it where it needed to be changed.
It needs to be something American needs to be lovable in a way. I mean, they are the best capitalists. They are selling us something with a TV show. And the Ricky Gervais original The Office is not meant to go on for like 9-10 seasons, 24 episodes a season. Ricky Gervais has a message to deliver, and he's going to do it. I don't remember. I think it's just 2 or 3 seasons and like 7-10 episodes a season, the UK
version. It was two seasons and I think 2 specials.
So he doesn't need you to fall in love with the characters. The American Office was a money-making machine, of course. Above all, there are people that bought the rights to it, and their goal was to drag it out. So they needed to do this. They needed to have the same setting, but with lovable characters. And I love them. I do admit I love the both versions. But yeah, they're 2 different TV shows. Very different.
For sure. There was it's very interesting looking at the difference between the British and the American comedic hero. Stephen Fry had a good line about this, that if you look at the American comedic hero, it's Steve Carell, it's Ben Stiller, it's Seinfeld, it's Joey from Friends, it's the quick-witted go-getter, it's the person who's always got a snappy comeback, and the person who, with his or her innate skill or excellence, is going to, win the day and get the girl and show his boss who's who, and is generally quite a positive, optimistic kind of person. I think that sums up the American approach to a lot of things, but certainly comedy. And if you look at the British comedic hero is not only the underdog, it's to use Stephen Fry's phrase, the person on whom life has shat from an incredible height. It's David Brent, it's Alan Partridge, it's Blackadder, it's Basil Fawlty, it's Marcq and Jeremy from Peep Show. It's Mr. Bean to some extent. It's the unfortunates. It's the person who, despite their charms and their wits, has done nothing with their life, and who is the sort of living a quiet life of desperation. And that provides a lot of fertile ground for sarcasm and bitter jokes and understatement, which is everything about British comedy. So if anyone wants to see like typical, what for me sums up British comedy, it's definitely The Office, the original version of The Office, and Peep Show is definitely a good example of British comedy. Are you a fan?
I haven't watched much of it. I do like it. I was going to bring up something. So I fully agree with you on that difference between American and British kind of humor, and it is. I would add it's something that really makes English humor also very, very special in the world, not just comparing to America. I mean, in America there is a cult of the individual, as you said. Like even the comic hero is a hero. But that's not the case in English comedy. As you said, life shat on this person. It's a very flawed human being. You made me think earlier on of that show, Allo, Allo. Do you know?
Yeah.
Oh, because your joke was set in the Second World War. That was it. I think that ability of the Brits to make fun of themselves in the Second World War is something unparalleled. The French don't make fun of themselves about the Second World War. Like the French cling to the idea of we resisted, okay? We did not collaborate. And you can't really joke about it. England just makes fun of, and you mentioned Blackadder as well. I think Blackadder is one of the greatest comic shows ever. It might not be the first TV show that if I'm looking for a laugh, it might not be the first one I'll think of and I'll switch on for an easy laugh, but it's brilliant. Allo Allo is awesome because you've got all these different characters, these different stereotypes. So Allo Allo is set in France. During the Second World War, you have this French innkeeper. What is it? An inn or a restaurant? Something? A cafe?
Yeah, a restaurateur. Yeah.
Yeah. The cafe of the village, and he's struggling. He doesn't care about the outcome of the war at all. He just wants to make sure that his cafe survives. And he has the German officers dining in his cafe, who the German officers don't really care about the Nazi agenda. They're just there. They're trying to make an easy buck from like little paintings they stole or things like that. You have the French collaborators, the French resistance. At one point, you have English paratroopers, something like that. They're trying to get back to England. You have all these different factions of the war at one point or another in his cafe, and the poor dude is struggling to just keep his cafe afloat.
I love it. Yeah,
I love it. But yeah, Peep Show is also a great show.
Yeah, it's and being able to so Blackadder, if anyone doesn't know it, is each series is from a different period of history. So Blackadder goes fourth, is the fourth series. That's about the First World War. Blackadder the Third is in the 18th century when George III is the king, and it takes place in the sort of palace of George IV, who was George III's son. And then the one before that is about Elizabeth I, which the Tudors and all of that stuff. But being able to take something like the First World War, which is a very sensitive topic, and being able to make a comedy out of that, I mean, I think they did a great job negotiating that minefield, quite literally, in one of the episodes.
Yeah.
But this is what I was saying earlier, that dark comedy especially is super duper important. Being able to laugh about something that you didn't even know you could laugh about, and being able to make light of it. And I would say that that's a really characteristic aspect of British comedy in particular. It's very dark, very, very dark. Especially compared to Russian comedy, forget about it. It is super duper dark. A lot of very blue jokes, as the French would say. Don't you think?
Yeah, agreed. Blackadder, as you said, the First World War. I mean, it's my favorite season. I love Blackadder goes fourth. It's my favorite season. And yet, at times, they really they deal with serious things. This whole idea. I remember Stephen Fry plays a general. I don't remember. General Melchard, and every time he's cooking up some new kind of attack. I was going to say strategy. It's not a strategy. He's just like every attack is basically like, okay, just send the guys forward. They're going to be butchered. Well, we got to try, right? It's like, what the hell? But that's exactly what was going on, actually, on both sides. It's tragic, and it needed to be said. And I think comedy is a great vector for that. The tactics were certainly questionable. And there's this part in the which I love, where there's a woman who disguises herself as a male soldier and smuggles herself into the trenches because she wants to see how war is fought. And when she's finally discovered,
she says to Blackadder, said, "Please let me stay. I just want to see how war is fought so badly." And his response is, "Well, you've come to the right place. War hasn't been fought this badly since," and then make some sort of reference. And it's such a, I love it. It's just such a small moment, but a clever. But by the way, the puns, les calembours,
Yes.
yes, plays on words. That's certainly
Genius.
a lot of people denigrate puns and cast them aside and say that they're sort of cheap jokes. I disagree. I love a pun, and today we're taping this on Sunday, which, as anyone who follows my page knows, is Pun Day. It's Technical Tuesday, Sunday is Pun Day, and
Sunday's Pun Day.
Sunday's Pun Day, yeah. So on every Sunday on my page, I always put it. So today it was it's a picture of a bear sitting at a camp table, and it said, "I made this with my bare hands." Lol. And then there's different puns every week. But
I like those.
First of all, before I corrupt your opinion with mine, what do you think about puns? Are you a fan? Do you like them?
Yeah, I really enjoy a good pun once in a while. I don't have a pun day, unfortunately. I worked once. I once had a colleague in a team, a teacher from England who also was a big fan of puns, and he was subscribed to some website. So like every day at the office, we knew he was going to arrive in the morning and he was going to have the pun of the day, and it really became one of the excitements of the day. Just you went to the office knowing yes.
Once a day might be a little too much, but yeah, I love that. And this is another example of what I was saying earlier about when you get a joke in a foreign language. It's such a nice feeling, and Russian social media is flooded with these kinds of puns. The Russians love puns. Like these. Have you seen these memes when it's like? I don't know how to describe it. It's like almost like a fake opposites meme. So, for example, you've got a picture of a lion, right? And it says Lev. And then there's a picture below it of the same lion, but it's flipped 180 degrees, and it says Prav. Lev, Prav. And that's the joke. I love it. I love things like that. And there's a picture, I don't know if you know, there's this type of fish called sudak.
Yeah.
Do you know that? So I don't know what it is in English, but it's some like river fish. So there's a picture of this fish, sudak, tudak. I love it. There's no such fish. It's just a pun. And there's all sorts of like things like amplitude, and stuff like that. Yeah, I love it.
There are good puns like that, good memes that can easily make a good warmer for a lesson. You can find some on various topics, and yeah, I enjoy a good pun, a good meme like that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Because it's puns. If stand-up and comedy shows and stuff like that's prose. Puns are like poetry. It's language as a unique spectacle in its own right. It's language for language's sake, and when you can, and it's, I would argue, maybe a joke in a very pure form. Because what actually is a joke? What makes a joke work? A joke is essentially two conflicting stories, two conflicting narratives. You have one story, right, that you think is the true story. And then suddenly I come in with the punchline, which is another story, and then humor results when you realize, oh, this whole time I was wrong about the story I was telling myself in my head. That's how a joke works. And a pun, I would argue, is the purest form of that. Right?
Yeah, no, it makes sense like that.
Mm-hmm. So in order to conclude, what recommendations should we give to our dear?
An hour already?
Yeah. Well, no, hang on. How long have we been?
No, pretty much. Yeah, it's what you're.
I don't know. Yeah, whatever. So I mean, from my end, I would recommend certainly Blackadder.
Yes,
you would agree.
What level though? I wouldn't recommend it. You see, that's where it's tricky. Recommending things to watch. I know Blackadder. I would be careful with Blackadder because I love Blackadder so much. And I know that if you don't get it, you're going to miss out on it. So it's not one of the first things I recommend to students, because I know it's not the easiest language. Come on. Rowan Atkinson delivers some epic lines, but the language he uses is not simple everyday language.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
So I would definitely keep that for B2 plus C1, C2 level students.
Yeah. I would say for the guys who did Peep Show, who the actors are called David Mitchell and Robert Webb, they have their own comedy show, their own comedy sketch show, and it's called That Mitchell and Webb Look. If you just type in Mitchell and Webb, there's Mitchell spelt the usual way and Webb spelt W-E-B-B. They've got some great, and because it's a comedy show, it's so varied, and there will be sketches in there which you won't get because the language is too complicated, or because it's a very specific British cultural reference, which just, which you won't get. But because it's so varied, it goes from one sketch to another sketch to another sketch. There's always, if you don't get one, you can just move on to the next one. Because sometimes if you're watching a film or something and you miss part of the narrative, then it's a domino effect and you can't understand the rest of the film. But if you're watching, a sketch show, there's no continuity. So you can not understand something and then understand the next thing and still, watch the whole series. So that might be a good place to start.
For sure, I'll check that one out. Actually, I didn't know that one.
You've never seen it? Oh, you're in for a treat. They're talented guys. I'll send you a link.
For something like that, I often recommend a bit of Fry and Laurie.
Oh yeah, it's very similar.
And Blackadder. Like, I'll keep things like, okay, I've got my top Brit shows would be Blackadder, definitely, but those are the ones I keep for later on. It's not my first recommendation. Blackadder, the thick of it is brilliant. But again, I mean, they speak so quickly. It's pure British comedy aimed at British viewers, and it's not like they're very, very commercial producers behind it trying to make a huge.
Yeah, it's Armando Iannucci produces that one.
Yeah,
Armando Iannucci also did The Death of Stalin. If you've
ooh, mm-hmm.
Good film. Good film
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I might surprise you with this one, but there's a TV show that I absolutely love. Again, English humor, and I recommend that faster to students. Keeping Up with Appearances.
What is this? 1976. Keeping Up Appearances. That's about Hyacinth Bouquet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because it is so British in the way that she's this. I had a great English friend who summarized being British in this way, and I think he was quoting someone. He said, "Being English is basically being embarrassed all the time about everything." And Hyacinth Bouquet that's exactly what her show is about.
Yeah.
She is middle class, but she aspires to be upper class with a lower class family. She's achieved some kind of middle class, right? I mean, her two younger sisters are clearly lower class. One is married to this like football hooligan who doesn't do anything. He just sits in his sofa or his bed and watches, I think, Liverpool. I think he's a Liverpool fan.
I don't know.
He's fat and he just watches TV, eats a bag of crisps and drinks beer. And her other younger sister is a nympho, basically, who'll sleep with any... There's a new guy every episode, basically. But she aspires, her surnames, it's spelt Bucket, but no. She puts a French tone in there, and she's always like, no, it's pronounced bouquet to sound super
but then
posh.
the family from across the street, they call themselves the Buckets. It's the Bouquets and the Buckets. Yeah. Oh, we missed Fawlty Towers off the list.
How could we?
There's an episode of Fawlty Towers which will be very familiar to people who are fans of Gogol, because there's a play called Brevisor, and Faulty Towers did a tribute to Gogol in one of their episodes. It's the episode called The Hotel Inspectors. I won't spoil it for anyone, but that's a good one. And of course, Monty Python. Where would we be without Monty Python?
Of course, Monty Python are, yeah.
I'd start with The Holy Grail's okay. I think it's overrated. I like The Life of Brian and The Meaning of Life.
Agreed. I love The Meaning of Life. We can't, I don't know, can we or not? But that song that they sing,
what, every sperm is sacred? Are you going to say, can we say sperm on the podcast? Yes, we can say sperm on the podcast, Antoine, because it's my podcast, and we'll talk about sperm all we want.
That song is hilarious, and it practically opens the movie. It's brilliant. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. I love the intro song the most. It's such a good song. Why are we here? Da, 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 da. That one, and it's and he again is there's a lot of French references today. But he has like a French accent when he sings the song, and he says, you know, I can't remember how it goes now, but yeah, but mais ce soir we're going to sort it all out, and he goes between French and English. It's quite funny. But yeah, the Meaning of Life, that's definitely a good one worth watching.
Yeah. Again, it's a bunch of sketches. What is great about that movie is you don't need to watch it as a whole. You should.
Well, arguable. The Life of Brian is not an example of that, but Flying Circus is. Yeah, that's separate sketches. Yeah. But Meaning of Life, it is quite sketchy, sure, but there's a narrative going throughout.
Yeah.
My favorite bit in that is when the Spanish Inquisition sketch. Do you remember that one? Is when he said people, because we say that in English, we say if someone's asking you a lot of questions, say, what is this, the Spanish Inquisition? So he's getting asked lots of questions. He said, I don't know, I didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition. And then these guys in like papal Catholic uniforms, but no one expects the Spanish Inquisition, burst through the door. It's brilliant. It is really brilliant. Anyway, we're not doing it justice, so go and watch these comedies. Don't think, just watch. So I'll have to put a list in the description.
Are you going to remember everyone?
Well, good thing I recorded this show.
Faulty Towers, Monty Python. It would have been embarrassing if we had done if we'd been jamming on comedy and we hadn't mentioned Faulty Towers, Monty Python.
Yeah. Well, good thing. Good teamwork.
Exactly.
All right.
I don't think. Have we forgotten anyone? If you quickly just to wrap things up.
Oh, sure. We've forgotten loads of people, but there's such a vast library of things to choose from that I think these are just my personal recommendations. I'm not saying that
we talked a lot about classics and anything more modern that comes to mind coming from Britain.
One last recommendation. It's not only a type of comedy, it's a whole different format of show or presentation. It's what's called a quiz con. So a quiz show is like like Family Fortunes or whatever, when you press the buzzer and you answer and say, the answer is whatever, Moscow. It's a quiz comedy show, so it's all comedians on the show. And so the one I'm thinking of is called QI. There are lots of different ones, but QI is certainly has a very special place in my heart in terms of British comedy. So it's like interesting facts and quizzes and all sorts of obscure, historical or geographical or just general knowledge facts with comedy, with special guests. It's really great. So I definitely recommend QI. I think most Russian people know QI these days.
Really?
Well, a lot of maybe not most, no, not most, but a lot of them are aware of it because obviously Stephen Fry is so famous in Russia.
True. Mm-hmm.
All right then.
All right. Well, brilliant.
Well, there we go. Time flies, as they say.
Absolutely.
We will meet again, I'm sure, for our musical conversation and for this live stream. Whenever we're doing that, I don't know.
Absolutely.
But aside from that, I must bid you adieu and. See you next time. Good sir.
See you next time, Mike. Thanks for inviting me.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.